While the Chancellor stood at the dispatch box in Parliament today, delivering lines rehearsed 100 times about stability, investment, and growth, the truth buried deep within the Treasury documents tells a story of betrayal. For the UK property sector, this budget was not a gentle course correction, it was a seismic, ideological shift in government philosophy, a direct declaration of war on property wealth. The cheerful promises of a government, on the side of working people, masked the brutal reality, a massive, gaping £20 billion fiscal black hole that they are absolutely desperate to fill. And they have made a cold, calculated decision about where they are going to find that money. They are coming for your assets. The overarching theme of this entire budget is not demand stimulation, building houses, or cutting taxes. It is pure, brutal revenue generation through targeted wealth taxation. The property market, which has long been viewed by generations of Britons as the single, untouchable store of wealth, the bank you keep in the ground, is now the primary, screaming bullseye for the taxman. Why? Because that wealth is visible, it's static, and much of it has never been properly taxed. The government knows that if they want billions, they have to go where the money sits. And in Britain, the money sits in bricks and mortar. The measures introduced today are not random tweaks, they are a coordinated, surgical strike designed to achieve three devastating, long-term goals. Listen carefully, because this is the future of property in the UK. First, they want to extract significant annual revenue from the highest value properties. This is the luxury tax bomb, and it's not about fairness, it's about setting a precedent for continuous, annual wealth taxation. It serves as the opening salvo, signaling to every person who owns a high-value home that the days of passive, untaxed appreciation are over. They want a cut of that wealth every year, regardless of whether you earn an income from the house or not. Second, they are determined to reduce the profitability of buy-to-let investments to zero. The 2 percentage point hike on property income tax and the capping of salary sacrifice relief are not simple tweaks, they are the financial equivalent of a slow, deliberate execution of the small, private landlord. The government sees the private rental sector as exploitative and wants it purged, replacing individual landlords with large, corporate entities who can absorb these tax hits. Point 1 This is why thousands of landlords are already selling, collapsing the housing supply, and sending rents through the roof. Point 2. Third, and most ideologically, they aim to force money out of what they term unproductive property and into other parts of the economy. Their message is, stop obsessing over your house, we want your money in the stock market, in government bonds, and in new businesses. Property, the traditional route to financial freedom for millions, is being reframed as a deadweight asset that must be taxed until the capital flees. This budget is the final, definitive nail in the coffin of the golden age of property. The days of property being a tax-free, simple investment are definitively, brutally over. What follows now are the terrifying details of how this attack on your wealth will actually unfold. We're going to look at the mechanisms of ruin, starting with the chilling tax changes that are already poisoning the market. This is, without a doubt, the most direct, politically charged, and ideologically brutal measure in the entire budget, the confirmed introduction of a new annual surcharge that is already being ominously dubbed the mansion tax. This is the government firing a warning shot across the bow of the entire high-net-worth community, declaring that the days of owning vast, appreciating property wealth without contributing a significant, recurring annual tax are completely and utterly over. This isn't a fee, it's a toll charged every single year just for the privilege of keeping your house. Let's look at the chilling mechanism. This tax is explicitly designed to target properties with a value of over £2 million, and critically, it is not a reform of the old council tax system. It is a supplementary, annual, fixed levy paid directly to central government, set to begin in April 2028. The government is delaying the implementation just long enough to cement the policy while ensuring the political fallout is contained in the immediate term. But the tax is coming, and it is tiered with malicious intent to ensure it stings those at the top the most. If your home falls between £2 million and £2.5 million, you will face an annual charge of £2,500. But for the truly wealthy, the owners of £5 million and above estates, the surcharge is a punishing £7,500 annually. This is an UN-hedgeable, non-deductible liability that compounds year after year. The Chancellor's strategy is simple, and it is twofold: fiscal reality and ideological revenge. The fiscal reality is that this tax is a surgical strike. It only affects less than 1% of UK homes, meaning the government avoids mass popular backlash. But because that 1% holds a disproportionate amount of wealth, the revenue generated will still be substantial enough to placate the Treasury's demand for new income. The political message is the real poison. It sends an unambiguous, crystal-clear message that is aimed at a core segment of the electorate: property is no longer a tax sanctuary. This is a key fulfillment of a manifesto pledge to make wealth work harder. It says, "You made your money on this asset without working, and now we are demanding a cut." It is the first step toward normalizing annual wealth taxes, and once a precedent is set, the threshold for that £2 million can be quietly lowered over time to catch more and more homeowners. The psychological impact on the market is immediate and crushing. Estate agents have already confirmed that luxury property viewings have dropped off a cliff since the budget leak. Why? Because this introduces an ongoing, unhedgeable liability that completely changes the fundamental cost-benefit analysis of holding high-value, non-income generating assets. For the international investor, the UK is now demonstrably less stable. For the wealthy homeowner, that £7,500 charge is a continuous reminder that the value locked in their home is no longer entirely their own. Expect price stagnation or even a significant correction at the very top end of the market in the coming years as this new liability is factored into house valuations. This tax is the ultimate symbol that the days of property wealth sitting untouched while working people shoulder the burden are finally and brutally over. This part of the budget is the government's most direct and devastating attack on the profitability of the buy-to-let sector. It is a surgical strike aimed squarely at the 1.8 million private landlords who provide the majority of Britain's rental housing. This sector was already reeling from years of punitive measures: the abolition of mortgage interest relief, Section 24, stricter EPC regulations, and the constant threat of regulatory change. But today, the Chancellor threw the final, crushing blow. The 2% income tax hike, death by 1,000 cuts. The most critical adjustment announced is the 2 percentage point increase across all income tax bands, applied specifically to income derived from property, savings, and dividends. This isn't just about the rich, this is about fundamentally reducing the take-home profit for every single landlord in the country. The basic rate, for property income, rises from 20% to 22%. The higher rate rises from 40% to 42%. The additional rate rises from 45% to 47%. For a higher rate taxpayer landlord, which is the majority of investors, this increase is devastating when combined with the existing rules. A landlord earning £50,000 in rental profit will now pay an extra £1,000 a year in tax for doing absolutely nothing different. This seemingly small percentage shift is the difference between a portfolio that is modestly profitable and one that is cash flow negative, meaning the landlord has to subsidize the investment every month just to keep it running. This accelerating financial pressure ensures one thing: the trend of existing landlords selling up is now a stampede. This is a deliberate policy to purge their amateur, or mom-and-pop, landlord from the market. The rental market fallout, corporate takeover. The government is betting, arrogantly, that huge institutional investors, pension funds, global property groups, and faceless corporations will swoop in and replace the 120,000 small landlords expected to exit the market in the coming years. But the short-term reality is a brutal and immediate crisis for tenants. 1. Supply collapse and rent explosion. The exit of individual landlords immediately reduces available housing stock. With collapsing supply and sustained, high demand, we are seeing an explosive rent growth that is making life unbearable for tenants. Reports from agents confirm families in every major city are engaging in desperate bidding wars, offering months of rent upfront just to secure a roof. 2. The rise of corporate landlords. The small landlord, who often showed a degree of human flexibility, is being replaced by large, faceless corporations. While this may bring some initial professionalization, it means less empathy, zero flexibility, and purely profit-driven tenancy management. These corporations view tenants as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. They maximize rent, minimize maintenance, and use technology to aggressively pursue evictions and rental increases. The tenant experience is being transformed into a far more challenging, high-cost, and dehumanizing environment. This budget accelerates the great landlord purge. It's a painful transfer of wealth and housing stock from millions of small owners to a handful of global corporations, and the average renter is the collateral damage, facing record rents in a brutal, collapsing market. If the property income tax hike was a sledgehammer, this next measure is a surgical strike with a scalpel, designed to bleed the sophisticated professional investor dry. This is the government closing what they term a costly loophole used by high earners, a measure that will fundamentally dismantle the highly efficient tax structures that have underpinned much of the UK's property investment growth over the last decade. We are talking about the capping of national insurance contributions, NICs, relief on salary-sacrificed pension contributions. Point 1. The mechanism, dismantling the tax shield. For years, this strategy was the gold standard in tax planning, particularly for company directors, highly paid employees, and those running limited company property portfolios. Point 2. The strategy was elegant. Instead of taking a high salary and paying 40 to 45% income tax and various rates of NICs, high earners would sacrifice a portion of that salary directly into their pension pot. This provided a dual, powerful benefit. 1. Immediate income tax relief. The money went into the pension completely shielded from income tax, up to 45%. 2. NICs avoidance. Crucially, the payment was also exempt from the 12% to 13.8% NICs that both the employee and employer would have had to pay. This created enormous efficiency. A high earner sacrificing £30,000 annually into their pension could see over £11,000 in immediate tax and NICs savings. This sheltered cash was then often leveraged to fund future property deposits, renovations, or to simply maximize capital growth. It was a perfectly legitimate, powerful tool that kept capital flowing into the system. Now, the government has moved to destroy that efficiency. From 2029, they are capping the NIC's relief for salary-sacrificed pension contributions at the first £3,200 per annum. Point 4. The effect is brutal and immediate for the high earner. A landlord who was sacrificing £30,000 to their pension is now only getting the full NIC's relief on the first £2,000. They lose the NIC's relief on the remaining £28,000 of income. This income is now effectively forced back into their highest tax brackets, resulting in a significant four-figure tax increase, thousands of pounds in new tax bills where none existed before. It turns a highly efficient strategy into a crippling liability. The goal, steering and punishing capital. The government's underlying goal is not complicated. They want to punish and steer capital. By dismantling this tax-advantaged structure, they are actively discouraging the use of wealth accumulation methods that are tied, even indirectly, to the property sector. They want capital to flow towards broader economic investment and infrastructure, not just sitting in sheltered pension funds that primarily benefited the wealthy and those who aggressively invested in property. This makes the total cost of being a professional investor exponentially higher and effectively removes one of the most powerful and flexible tax planning tools available. The seminars and financial playbooks that taught these strategies are now utterly obsolete. This move, combined with the income tax hikes, ensures that the golden age of tax-efficient, leveraged property investment is well and truly over. What we have just walked through is not a mere budget. It is the definitive end of an era and the beginning of a terrifying new property paradigm. The budget today reinforces that the UK market is undergoing a fundamental and violent transformation, driven by multiple crises simultaneously crashing into each other at a velocity that makes 2008 look like a practice run. The entire crisis can be summarized by three devastating forces that are now permanently altering the financial landscape. 1. Demand destruction. High interest rates have squeezed homeowners into mortgage prisoner status, destroying organic buyer demand and leading to the biggest one-month asking price drops in years. Nobody can afford to buy, and nobody can afford to move. 2. Supply collapse. Punitive tax changes, the 2% income hike, regulatory burdens, EPC rules, and the elimination of financial strategies, salary sacrifice caps, are driving an irreversible landlord exodus, collapsing rental supply, and transferring housing stock from small owners to faceless corporations. 3. Revenue generation. New wealth taxes, the mansion tax, and aggressive income tax hikes make holding expensive property and deriving income from it much more costly. The government has prioritized tax revenue over market stability. This collision has generated a toxic, unstable environment. The government's own economic forecasts, which had to be revised, admit they are making a massive gamble. They are betting that taxing wealth and property harder will somehow generate the growth necessary to fill a gaping £16 billion tax revenue hole. The risk, as outlined in the leaked analysis, is that they only succeed in strangling the market and accelerating the crisis. It is vital to note what the government, in an act of political self-preservation, avoided. They stepped back from the politically catastrophic move of introducing capital gains tax on your primary residence. This preserves the final piece of the social contract for the vast majority of regular homeowners. But do not be fooled by this single omission. The fact that this measure was widely discussed and modeled shows that no asset is sacred anymore. They know they can always come back for it. The final takeaway: the golden age is over. The era of easy, passive property wealth is over. The government is not interested in propping up asset prices, it is interested in generating revenue and steering capital. This new paradigm demands immediate, brutal honesty from you. The message is chillingly clear: property is no longer a safe haven, it is a taxed utility. The winners will be the quick movers, those who adapt their portfolios instantly, focus on confirmed infrastructure growth corridors, and align their rental properties with the newly subsidized family market. The losers will be the slow, the complacent, and the dreamers, those who believe they can survive this storm by playing by the old, outdated rules. When historians look back, they won't wonder how the crisis happened, they'll wonder how anyone claimed they didn't see it coming. The banks are preparing for mass defaults. The government is quietly modeling emergency interventions and even the possibility of social unrest. The only people who don't know what's about to happen are the British public. And that, tragically, is exactly how those in power want it. The bomb has exploded. If you are not prepared, you are going to get absolutely crushed.